What is good, everybody? Welcome back to Bird Dogs. I'm your host, 2400 Y2K, and I know it's been another minute. I'm in school now, so it's probably going to be like that because I got to deal with that, and there's other stuff going on. But I thought it'd be good to try to get back in the stew, try to get, try to cook one of these up. If you can hear the difference in how I talk, it's because um, my tooth fell out, like my front tooth. And I think I'm pretty sure I've told on this before that I got like jumped, and maybe I didn't. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and listen. But yeah. Anyways, so my tooth got knocked out when I was younger, and now I don't have a tooth. Well, I had like a replacement, right? But it just sat there like glued in. It's kind of hard to explain, but anyways, it wasn't permanent. So the other day it came out, and now I'm just sitting here with down one tooth. So you might hear when I say F's, it's going to sound a little different. A lot of wind coming through there. So yeah, it's a little weird recording, but I'm going to try and record this episode. The other day was St. Patty's Day. I think it was 2-3 days ago now, and I enjoy St. Patrick's Day because I grew up in a home where um, we celebrated holidays pretty heavily, and my grandma, I think, yeah, she's Irish, and I don't know, my grandpa might be a little bit, but my grandma was definitely Irish. So, or not all the way, but there was a good chunk of her one of her grandparents was like full blood Irish. So, it was a pretty important holiday to them because if you know the history, when the Irish immigrated to America, things weren't so great. They got treated very poorly, um, and a lot of them were poor, grew up in kind of fucked up conditions, and so the St. Patrick's Day here is celebrated by the Irish. Uh, it's not really celebrated, I guess, back in Ireland, but here it's celebrated because it's more like an American Irish thing, kind of a Irish pride way that the Irish people could show their pride, and it's interesting. It's interesting because I watched a movie recently. I watched it way back in the day, but I watched it again recently because I hadn't watched it in forever. It's called Black Mass, and essentially it's about this guy called Whitey Bulger, and he lived in Boston, yeah, Boston, Massachusetts, and so he was like a like a mobster. They called it a gang, but I guess yeah. The my definition of gang is more so the modern one. So it's when I don't think of that as a gang. They were definitely organized crime. They were running like vending machines, loan sharking, basically everything covered under RICO charges. Uh, they were doing all that up in this place called Winter Hill, Massachusetts, and but he was Irish anyways. That was the kind of the getting to the point of that. And there's a scene in the movie where they go to like a St. Patrick's Day parade, and he's actually really happy and like super proud, and he really enjoys it. And it's a weird contrast for me to see because they live this one life. He lives this lifestyle where he kills people and he hurts people and he intimidates people, and the mob lifestyle is pretty wild, especially at his level. You know what I mean? He's not just a runner. He's not even just muscle. He was the head of the Winter. They call it the Winter Hill Gang, and he was the head of it. So it's weird to see the dynamic of people in positions of power, especially in uh, like criminal organizations, and how they have nationalism or uh, pride about like weddings, or I don't know how to explain it. It's like they, these things that normal, regular, everyday people have. they also do. They value though. I'm, I'm not explaining it quite right because it's hard to put into words my thought process, but um, seeing him celebrate Irish, the St. Patty's Day parade was pretty interesting, pretty cool. Because you often think of when money's involved, big amounts of money, and that's what these criminals and people in power are ultimately doing it for most of the time is money. It's hard to imagine any other ideology playing a role, or at least for me. And I forget that there's, some of them are religious, some of them are very nationalist, such as in his case, he loved his country. They talk about a scene. There's a scene in the movie where they talk about how he something. His son died, and then his mom died not long after. And they said the only time he ever seemed happy was when he was talking about the IRA, which, if you don't know what that is, that's the Irish Republican Army, and that was one of the factions in the war between the skirmishes, whatever you want to call it. It's called the Trouble, or I think that's part of the Troubles. I'm not super well versed in the entire thing. It's because it's a long history. It's kind of like the Israel Palestine situation. It's a long, complicated history. It's not like it just happened in one era. The Troubles goes back a while. I think 1800s when it formally. But even before that, you know what I mean. There's always been resistance in Ireland and the famine and whatnot. So it's hard to pinpoint, and it's a really broad topic to research. But essentially, they're a faction in the war with Britain, with the British. This originally was in like World War One era, early 1900s, and there was a series of wars, and it ultimately bled into the more modern era. I think they called the Good Friday Agreement in uh, agreement. My bad. I'm looking it up real quick. I'm sure you could probably hear it. Uh, 1998. So you know what I mean. That's relatively recent. Um, so yeah, they were a faction in that. This Whitey Bulger was around in the uh a true criminal, a truly active in crime, I think in the 70s and 80s. He was a more small time criminal before that. And then he went to Alcatraz, which I forget that's a place because, it's kind of a mythos now. It's kind of a myth now of, um, you know what I mean? It's a tourist attraction. And it's not even that old, really. Like, it's crazy to think that he went there in what? Sorry, guys. I'm going to do a little research while I try to record the episode. But yeah, he was in Winter Hill neighborhood of Somerville, Massachusetts. This is the Whitey Bulger. Anyways, yeah. So he grew up in Boston. He he went to Alcatraz in, let's see, in 56. That's what I was looking at. In 56, he served his first term in the Atlanta penitentiary. And okay, so this is interesting, right? This is a little side bit. And I didn't even mean to, like, this bit I found through a book. An audiobook I was listening to called Poisoner in Chief, and it's about this CIA scientist who was basically the head of MK Ultra and several other things, but he made poisons and different agents to neutralize people, different stuff like that. He did all kinds of wacky shit that you think of, the gadgets, but he also, did serious shit and stuff that I think he was involved in the killing of some leader in South America, or not, his invention or his gas or his poison or whatever was used to kill a South American or African leader. Um, but anyway, so this guy Sidney Gottlieb, right? He has this MK. He's doing MK Ultra, and this is during the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I want to say ended late 70s or mid 70s, because I think after a while, basically his research wasn't useful, because what he was trying to prove with MK Ultra was mind control, that you could mind control people. That was the ultimate. That's what they were ultimately trying to find, is a way to mind control people, so you could have assassins. Think like Black Ops and stuff like that, like those kind of things. But you can kind of, but not in the way that you think. You know what I mean? Like, it's brainwashing, Bucky style, train car shit. But ultimately, it was unsuccessful. You can't actually mind control somebody. And acid, LSD, drugs, they definitely do not let you mind control people. They don't do that. I've done acid before, and no one could mind control me. I can tell you that. I couldn't even I couldn't control my mind, so I don't think anyone else was gonna corral it for me. And that's kind of what he learned. It's a long book. There's a lot of crazy stuff in there. I suggest you give it a read. It's called Poisoner in Chief. It's really interesting. It's pretty long, but the story's really worth it, because it's a movie plot. Like, a lot of wild shit happens. They're like sitting there at one point. He's got all of his scientist buddies with him, and they're all sipping on wine or whatever. And he's like, "Well, did you enjoy it?" And they're like, "Yeah, it was good wine." And he's like, "Well, good, because I laced it with LSD." Like, this fool was out of his mind. He was doing crazy stuff. I think, yeah, he was taking LSD. Uh, it was just a recipe for disaster. So MK Ultra ended up being a flop. But back to my main point. This guy Whitey Bulger went to prison in the Atlanta penitentiary, and Sidney Gottlieb, he was running experiments, and this is true. This is true. It says here in the wiki article that he later told mobster Kevin Weeks he was used as a human subject. Um, it says here, like, it implies that it was okay. No, it kind of tells the full story a little bit. I thought it was implying that it was just a story, but no, it really happened to him. He was dosed. Him and several other inmates were offered reduced time off their sentences, because they told him a series of lies. They told him they were trying to find a cure for schizophrenia. They told him that they told him that these drugs would help them, and they were, were really close to a breakthrough, and that they'd be helping the clinical trials, and da 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 da. Some of them, they just, were more. I don't want to sound mean, but more simple minded. So they took advantage of those guys, and it was really bad. But anyways, that Whitey Bulger, it was bad. I think they tested on. I think they gave him LSD over 50 times over an 18-month period, and it would be back to back. Sometimes it would be back to back nights, and he complained about psychosis and you know what I mean, hallucinations, and um, he was, he couldn't sleep. He was freaking out. The walls were coming. The walls were breathing. Um, if you've ever done LSD, you know kind of how it affects your brain, and or at least the state that you're in. Like, it's more hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but um there's there's a big separation from reality, and it's hard to explain what it is, because I'm not quite sure, and I'm not so sure scientists really know you know what I mean? You can explain those science and say it's this, it's the chemical reaction, da da. But when you're in the state, there's like certain thing like the flow state kind of. I don't know how to explain it, but anyways, it can take over your mind very easily. And so to think that this guy was given LSD sometimes nights in a row, um, several times a week, obviously several times a month. Um, that's wow. You know what I mean? Like that's really that'll easily put someone into psychosis. That'll easily damage someone's brain. Um, he became a worse criminal after he went there, and um, you can't really explain it. And this was in the 50s and 60s, and when he got caught way later. But when he was in the height of his criminal activities, they number one, they I don't think they would have believed him, and two, nobody really considers that. But it's interesting for me to analyze because that really does have an effect on somebody in a big way. Especially, I my one trip affected my life a lot and made me think differently. And to think that over an 18-month period, given LSD over 50 times, what that would do to you psychologically. And he came out, and you know what I mean? I'm sure that he still has to this day probably psychosis from it, and hallucinations and dreams and things that from the LSD, that nightmares and shadow men and all that stuff. And combined with the fact that he killed people with his bare hands uh, sometimes, and all the other life events that he went through. I mean, that's just, his mind is really interesting to me because that has gone through a lot. LS all that LSD combined with the traumatic life events that you went through, it's got to have some kind of I want to see what he sees, what he hears, what his life is like, because LSD is giving people psychosis over, just a couple uses. I'm sure that, you know what I mean? I wonder what that's like, And he passed away in 2018, I think. So, um, but it's astounding to me that he went through that and what that would do to a person's mind, and how the CIA was allowed to do that, and uh, how this was never considered when looking at him as a criminal, or you know what I mean. It wasn't taken into account when the FBI was looking into him when they were trying to catch him. He later became like an informant, and it was brought up briefly, but it wasn't in a way that's like, this guy has truly been through a lot, and you know, I would want to study him, but they didn't look at it in a clinical way. They looked at it, they just didn't look at it at all. I mean, they bypassed it. It didn't matter to them. But at the age of, I think he was 27, for your mind to go through that, it's still a developmental stage like that. You're not even fully a 30-year-old man yet, and your brain is put through that kind of trauma. Astounding. But that was just a little bit on that. Sorry, I got sidetracked. I just, because it made me think of the book, and it made me think of like the whole MK Ultra thing, and my experience with acid, and how LSD affects a person, and how much LSD they gave these people, and how that would affect a person's brain, and truly traumatize you and give you lifelong lasting effects. It's interesting to me. So I got on that tangent a little bit. But anyways, back to Black Mass. He celebrates the St. Patty's Day. Oh, and on that little bit, um, again, I think that's interesting how criminals can experience uh, nationalism or pride in a way. It's like, think about it. The mafia, the stereotype mafia people, the people in the mafia, the members in the mafia, they have big weddings, and they're extravagant, they're expensive, they're filled with all kinds of you know like nice chairs, nice tables in huge venues. There's hundreds of guests. They're getting thousands of dollars in presents, or this, or yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's interesting to me how much pride they, how they do normal stuff like that as well. They're killing people. They're in all this crime syndicate. They're ducking the law. They're in all this drama, but at the same time, they're still human and they still have human values. Money isn't everything. It's nice, and that's why they have those nice big weddings and stuff. But at the end of the day, I think a Goodfellas, when they're in prison and they're still cooking, um, like spaghetti, I think it was, and that holds true. No matter what it is, whether it's crime or legal, or if it's a tribe from the Gauls in 45 AD or whatever, the English Knights, the French in their revolution. I'm just trying to go through the different time periods to give you an example of in each one of them how all these different people and clans and um, you know what I mean? Because that's what mafias are like. Is essentially back in the day they're like the like daimyo in Japan, or um like a warlord in Mongolia during the Khan period. They're, you know what I mean? They're just clans usually of, could be 50 people, could be 1,000 people. They're clans built up, made up of different families and lineages, usually under one banner. And these are small clans. They're very prideful, and they go under the bigger banner. Um, but it's interesting to see these small, or these clans, these gangs, these whatever you want to call them, how human they are. It's not just about money and conquest. It's they have these nice weddings. They take pride in certain things. They I think they do love their family a lot of the time. Um, the nationalism thing is huge, especially with modern day uh, mafias and mobs, or not modern day, but I guess there's still the modern ones, but the ones you see emerge in the 18 and 1900s, because there's always been organized crime. There's always been syndicates. There's always been mafias and gangs in a sense. But when you get a place like America where it wasn't the native peoples here and it wasn't like the other colonies, which were full of, usually one type of people, especially towards the later dates, um, you get the Irish mafia or mob, you get the Italian mob, you get the Jewish mob. Um, I think those were like the big three, especially in New York at the time. But the sense of nationalism they have, and how important being Italian is to the Italian mob, and how important, like I was talking about with Whitey Bulger, how important his Irish heritage and his Irish identity is. Even when he's a mobster, it's still very important. That's part of the mob. You know what I mean? Is being a Irish. I guess they didn't necessarily have to be from Boston, but most people in his gang were Irishmen from Boston, and so it's interesting to see that nationalism and the pride. Whereas I'm sure that damages business in a lot of aspects. I'm sure that there's certain areas that would work a lot smoother if there wasn't so much nationalism and so much deep rooted um, love for one's heritage and culture. I'm sure that would gain them more money in certain aspects. However, we as humans, and this is what I'm trying to figure out and study, we as humans, we hold these values, and for some reason they triumph things that would make our life easier or make our life better in a sense. Because for it's like when people die. um it's kind of hard to explain, but there are lots of instances where people would rather die than give up who they are, as their identity. And that's one of the biggest or punishments and humiliations you can do to a people, is to subjugate them, or to wipe away their heritage, i.e., what the colonists did to the Native Americans. Um, it's something that disconnects people, and you know what I mean. And this is gonna sound crazy, and just bear with me for a second, but imagine if imagine if the Native Americans did agree to just cut their hair and assimilate and speak English and move into cities, and you know what I mean, and uh give up their way of life, give up their culture, give up the songs, the traditions, the outfits, their way of life, the way they live, their hunting, the if they would have gave that up voluntarily, in the unbiased, just straight down opinion, it would have been better, right? And bear with me, this is what I'm saying. But it's not better, because we as people do not that's not you we do not want to be stripped of our culture. Like I said, that is a huge insult. That is a huge way to to try and kill a people, um to try and change their culture, to try and um take away from them. And it doesn't matter if culture changes throughout time, right? Your culture will change, but whatever culture is important to them, whatever they deem important at the time, whatever ancestors they believe in, whatever, you know what I mean, whatever they hold dear to them, to try and strip people of that, I think that's inhumane. And I think that idea of people holding culture and things like nationalism and ethnicity and these different identities, um I think them holding these different identities above things like money, or um ease, or whatever the case, you know what I mean. A lot of people, you could offer lots of, like I think of those mafia guys, or I think a lot of the guys who are super patriotic or super about their country, and you can offer them a lot, and I don't think they would change. And I know that sounds crazy, and there's a lot of people that would. There's a lot of people that take money, and usually that's poor people, because they've never had it, and so it's harder for them to hold on to these identities, because life has been so hard and so bad. And hence why you get things like traitors, or people switching sides, or um, there's other factors, but a lot of times that's what you get. You know what I mean? Is those kinds of things. So I don't know. I found that really interesting, uh, because he not only was super proud, and this is what I'm talking about. Where the money aspect, he um my bad, I lost it for a second. Anyways, he decided to fund the IRA, which, well, back to the point way earlier. Sorry, I get on these tangents, but that's how I am. I gotta speak on them now, otherwise I'm gonna forget them. As you guys know, I got a terrible memory, so I gotta jump on things when they're hot. So the IRA, anyways, he wanted to send money and weapons to the IRA, which the IRA is the Irish Republican Army, which, complicated history, but anyways, they're fighting the British because they want the British out of their country and to be allowed to uh, govern themselves. Um, the IRA committed terrible acts as well, so it's not like they're golden and super cool. But what the British did, I think it's like the story of America. I mean, what we did to each other wasn't always good, and our policies weren't always cool. But so King George, some guy thousands of miles away, shouldn't get to decide what I do, or what our people do. That's and the way they enforced it was brutal. And so the Irish, or the IRA, they decided to fight back against the British that were there, and they had problems with the North Ireland, which, if you don't know what that is, that's where the British have a stronghold. I think it's a different country or something different. It's not part of Ireland, or they don't consider themselves part of Ireland, and on the map they're not part of Ireland, but it is in Ireland. It's just like if you want to call it a state in Ireland. So the Northern Irish, they're more colonized by the British. They're more friendly towards the British. But anyways, the IRA had a war against the British, and in the 60s, well, I think when he did this was in the 80s, 70s or 80s, but in the 70s and 80s and 90s, they were still having gunfights, still in shootouts. And when we're not talking like, they're just shooting out with nines and pistols. I mean, they're with assault rifles, machine guns. They have ambushes set up. They're really, I mean, it's not quite a war, but, or maybe it's considered a war, but I mean, it's more a series of skirmishes back and forth, right? Or not really back and forth. It's skirmishes from the IRA, and the British really have control and more power, bigger military, so they can kind of do what they want. And a lot of times that was retaliatory on the people. But anyways, they were waging war against the British, and they need, what do you need to fight a war? Well, the biggest thing you need is money. You're always going to need money to fight a war, because you need to feed the troops. I mean, this goes into logistics, which I am very interested in, war logistics. But you need money because you need to feed the troops, you need to clothe the troops, you need all this stuff for an army to function. And the other biggest thing you need if you're going to fight a war is weapons. Right, we don't want to be out there with fists against one of the biggest militaries, one of the strongest militaries in the world. And so Whitey Bulger, being super proud of his Irish heritage, being super nationalistic when it came to Ireland, and this is what I'm saying, despite it costing money, probably thousands of dollars, probably if not hundreds, you know what I mean? Because so what he did, right, is putting all that aside. He didn't care. He loved Ireland so much. He loved the Irish so much, and he loved the cause of the IRA so much that he decided to send a boat full of weapons. Let's see. Because I'm trying to get the stats on how much, because one of them got popped. Okay, yeah, here we go. We got it right here. In 1984, a fishing boat named the Valhalla left Boston Harbor for the Irish coast, carrying 7 tons of guns and ammunition valued at over $1 million. And let's just see, 1 million in 1984 worth today, 3,729,000. Holy shit. $3,029,797.88 is what $1 million in 1984 would be equivalent into today's money. So he essentially put $3 million down into the IRA cause because he cared so much. And he sent a boat. And right, this one got popped. I don't know if he has other ones that didn't, or if other money got there. I'm not quite sure, but I know that this one got popped. and he sent $3 million worth of guns and ammunition over to the IRA because he cared so deeply about the Irish cause, um, about the freedom of Ireland, about the IRA and them, kicking the British out. And he put, what I mean, a $3 million into that, not because it would gain him money, not because, you know what I mean, not for something material, really, just because he believed in it. And I'm sure he enjoyed the praise from him. I'm sure that's what felt good is when the IRA were thanking him. And it showed that in the movie. He did appreciate that. He did seem happy when the IRA were like, "Thank you, Jimmy. We really appreciate this." So, um, it's just that's super interesting to me. That somebody can be super nationalistic, have all this money, be in a crime syndicate. You have the FBI trying to take you down. You're killing people. You're in gang wars. All this going on, and you still love something like, I don't even think he's from Ireland, but he still loves his Irish heritage that much that he's willing to do something like that. I thought that was a super interesting bit. Um, but yeah, that's the movie Black Mass. No, I did enjoy that movie though. It was super good. He does some bad shit in it, but ultimately, I can kind of understand it after the MK Ultra stuff. Um, that would fry your brain. MK Ultra was one of the most unhinged. You know what I mean? The CIA and secret police over throughout all of history have done uh, sadistic shit, insane shit, but nobody had access to something like LSD at the time. So nobody, I think, could do something that sadistic. You can't imagine how bad a bad trip is. So hard to put into words and imagine a bad trip combined. So here's the thing too: is mine was so bad that I like basically like blacked out and went all out of it. But if you didn't do that and you want I've had bad trips on shrooms, and there's a point where you like I was like an hour in, and I had taken shrooms and I thought I could handle it. I couldn't, and we were watching something, and I don't know how to explain a bad shroom trip. Um, but it kind of starts with like it's like the feeling of ultimate anxiety. Like you feel your heart start pounding, you can like feel your eyes widen, and you start to like at least me, like I was hyper focusing on like the TV, and I could see like faces and stuff morphing, like because it was like a shot of space, and like I could see like stuff in the space like morphing, and I was like, oh fuck, and I didn't like it. So I ran upstairs, and I go outside because I'm like, fresh air. I need to cool down because it was hot down here too, and I was like, I need to cool down and just chill out and breathe and like, you know what I mean. And it kind of helped, but honestly, I think if I would have just gone back down and hung out with my homies and watched the movie, I think I would have been fine. Um, but I didn't. I overthought it and made it worse. I went out there. I'm like, fuck, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. It's like anxiety ridden. I like can't concentrate. Like the visuals are like fucked up. Like I don't want to look at anything, right? Like I'm sick of it because I'm like, I look at the tree starts getting weird. I look at the moon's like doing the 3D holographic thing. I look at the grass, like the grass starts getting weird. I like everything I look at is overwhelming. It starts to morph or has like a tracer effect. And I'm like, I'm so over it, right? So I started playing music, trying to chill out. I'm playing music for a little while. I get done with the music, or I get done with like one song. I'm like, okay, how long? Like, and I start watching the clock. My God, it felt like forever. It was like, I think, what was it? I think it was 11. when I looked at the clock, and then I was like, fuck. And I started listening to music. I started spamming through songs. Like, when you're having a bad trip, it is so bad. You're like, you're not having fun. I'm like full of anxiety. I'm trying to get into like a peaceful mindset, but I can't. Like, I'm trying to put on music that I'm not liking any of the music. The music sounds weird. Some of it, I'm like not vibing with that. I'm trying to change the song. I can't get a song. Like, I can't get anything. I can't watch anything because I don't even want to look at anything. Like, and so all that's going on, and I look at the clock and it's like 11:04, and I'm like, dude, like, this is gonna be a long night, because like, you just want it to be over, right? And but when you're tripping, like, you can't go to sleep. You close your eyes and like try to go to sleep, and it just won't work. Like, your mind's overstimulated. You start seeing things in the thing, and you know how when you close your eyes, you have like the still images, or like the light effect from whatever you're just looking at. Like, it'll do that, and it'll start getting weird, and it's so bad. And so like, I went into my bedroom. I'm laying down. I'm like, I'm trying to watch TV. That's not fun. I love my room. Normally I'm hyped in my room. Like, I go down, like, I can't vibe. I like look at the stairs. I want to go downstairs to my homies, but I'm like, nah, like, I'm just gonna ruin their vibe, and like, I overthink it way too much. So I don't. I end up sitting in the living room, and the only thing that kept me from like going into the worse, it's already bad, but the only thing that kept me from going even worse was the Big City Greens, dude. If you know what that is, it's so funny, bro. It's like this little Disney show, these like yellow fucking characters, and they're so weird, and like, I don't even know anything about it. I don't even know really anything about the episode I watched. I just remember locking in and watching that, and like, I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of started to reel myself in and take control a little bit. And then I went back to my room, right? And this is evil shit. I don't know if this is by design. I don't know what this comes from. I don't know if it's my own brain psyching me. I don't know what does this. But I had like laid down, it like subsided, like, I wasn't tripping, like, the visuals were like gone, like, I was thinking straight, like, I was like, oh my god, like, I could feel my heart rate going normal, like, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm back to normal, like, hell yeah. And like 2 minutes go by and it starts creeping up again. I'm like, no fucking way, no. And it got me again, like, it put me in anxiety mode. The visuals came back, like, I didn't want to look at anything, I didn't want to hear anything. Um and it went on like that for a while until like, so it started at like 11. I think by like, let's see, I was already tripping a little bit before that, so it was probably like a real raw hour and a half. So like probably like 12:30, I was able to wrestle it back in, and it subsided enough to where I could go back to, or I could go to sleep. Um so that's what I did. But that's one mild, right? I'm I didn't even eat. Oh no, that one I fucked up, right? Because this is okay. So this is, it's like alcohol kind of with shrooms, or at least with me, right? I ate some, and I was feeling good. We're watching the movie. I was having a good time. Shit was so shit was great. And then I ate more because I was like, I felt like Superman. Like, you know what I mean? It's like alcohol. Like, you drink to a certain point and you're like, hell yeah, I can do anything. Like, you're feeling good, you're vibing. The vibes are immaculate. The vibes are 10 out of 10. And then you hit that point, and then I overdid it, right? And I was like, and then that's when all that happened. And so I couldn't. That's one mildly bad shroom trip, and that was hell for 1.5, around 2 hours. It was just awful, and I could not imagine doing 7 to 10 hours of that, because that's how long usually an acid trip is like, it depends on how much you take, but this is the experiments they're running, and he's already getting dosed several times. So I imagine, I can't remember exactly from the book, but the doses were pretty hefty, and some of the inmates reacted really bad, and hurt themselves, and um, still complained of psychosis up until, I mean, I think the one of the guys got interviewed in the 90s. So, you know, obviously it wasn't active, but he probably still did see hallucinations and hear things that weren't there, and have paranoia and delusions and um, all those things, schizophrenia probably, because all those things can result from use of psychedelics. I don't want to say once, because usually it's, most drugs you're not going to do once and it's going to do that. It's not. It can happen. There is, the 1% of the 1% that will take acid one time and have schizophrenia, but most people it's going to be prolonged use or several times use, and it doesn't take that many. I'd say if you trip uh, 10 times in a short span, you could develop psychosis. And so imagine some of these inmates are on the same regimens or similar doses or even more so. Some of these people got acid, 60 times. And so I can't, I can't imagine 2 days in a row where the first day, like you're sick, like you want it to stop, you're losing your mind, you're seeing things come out of the walls, walls are melting, your people are talking that aren't there. You're having crazy bad thoughts. You're talking to God. You're having inner monologues that are insanity. I mean, just from the little bit I've tripped, it's a lot. You know what I mean? Those are a lot. Those take a lot out of you. Those are and it's hard to convince. You know what I mean? Decide what's real and yeah, that's what I'm saying. Doing getting hit with acid 50 times has to have, obviously it has negative effects, but I sit here and try to put myself in the first person shoes of one of these patients who has to sit there and deal with these effects of LSD for several, sometimes 2 days in a row. Maybe I don't know if they did three, but I know at least some of them they're doing it 2 days in a row. Um, and even then, the come down, you know what I mean? Acid isn't like something that's just gone. Um, because even me, I went into a coma for. I'm not gonna give all the way all these details, but even when I woke up, I was still on a come down, and I've heard that from a lot of people that like go to sleep. Your trip's done. It's been 6-7 hours. Your trip's finally fading out. You can go to sleep. You go to sleep, and they'll go to school and they'll say, "I still felt like hazy. I wasn't there. I couldn't concentrate." So that feeling, um, and you're in prison. I mean, I could go on and on and on about this because the amount of variables, and they're in prison, which is already a bad environment. People are being uh stabbed, ard, I don't know if I can say the word, I don't know if YouTube is cool about it, but you know what that is, essayed, all that stuff, um beat, um you know what I mean. Prison is a horrible place, and that combined with LSD experiments, combined with your the events that go on in there, plus the housing, all these different elements. I mean, it's absolutely something that I think is really interesting, really crazy, but something that I just found interesting because I'd heard that little bit about with Whitey Bulger in the book, the audiobook, and then I watched the movie and they mentioned it a little bit, so it was kind of cool. It was kind of neat to see that and make a little connection there. And it's cool that I can just tell you guys my theories or um, my take on it. Comment and stuff. Like, let me know if you guys have similar takes and or what you guys think of some of the stuff I talk about. Um, I don't know. I just thought this was interesting. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Um, we're at like 49ish minutes, and I think this episode's gonna be about Whitey Bulger. I think I'm gonna title it something like that. It wasn't supposed to be. Literally, just started this. Watch Black Mass not too long ago, and I thought about it, and I was like, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that, and And I was like, oh, the Irish thing, that's really interesting. And then I went off on a tangent on that, and then I went on a boom, 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 boom. But that's my style, and I'll get better, and especially with school and just doing this more consistently, and I've learned, or not more consistent, but just doing this consistently, even though it's not super consistent. I think I'm on year 1 or 2 now of this being out, so just with that, I'm getting better. My throat's sort of hoarse, and and I'm getting better at that, and I think I'll continue to grow and get better at speaking and getting topics more narrowed down, or more of a cohesive sort of podcast. But for now, it's kind of just riffing and going off of the last idea. Writing stuff down for me is hard because I don't like it, and it's just hard, which makes school hard. But that's another topic. Hopefully by the end of it, I'll get to tell you guys some stories and then go into that a little bit more. But for now, I'm just goodness me, am I all right? I'm freaking out here at the end. I think it's because I'm hot. It's like 100 degrees down here. It's 12 at night, and I've been going to the gym. I didn't say that, but I've been going to the gym. So I went to the gym today, and pretty tuckered out. I did all this after everything I had to do. I had class, all that. So probably I should start recording these earlier, which I hate doing stuff earlier in the day. But I think I might have to because I'm kind of beat, and so I don't know if you could tell, but this is a little bit more low energy, and I kind of stutter a little bit, and I kind of lose my train of thought and whatnot. And I already do that enough, but mixed with the fatigue, it's not super great. But I appreciate y'all for listening. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, all that corny shit. Let me know what you thought of the episode. No one ever does. But let me know what you thought of the episode. Hopefully y'all go watch Black Mass, go listen to Poisoner in Chief, and I'll catch y'all the next one. I'm out.
Bitch, what we doing here? I'm swimming in the money, I need scuba gear. What you do this year? I took a trip to Belize to get a souvenir. I'm whiter than some souvenirs. Everywhere I go, they're staring at my ass. Grown women still have my parents